going to get going here. We'll start with Jason Kersey and then go to Eric Bailey.
Yeah. Hey, Alex. So what have you, now that you've had a chance to sort of look at the tape, have you figured anything out in terms of the big plays and are you confident that those can be contained moving forward?
Well, extremely confident that they can be contained moving forward. I mean, like any play in football, it can be contained. The challenge is to contain it, right? And so there's not like one common denominator or one obviously a blown coverage. We talked about cross training, where there's also a real issue with cross training, because you can miss some work, you can miss some reps, you can miss some opportunities, and maybe an individual gets the first rep of a specific look in a game, and it's worst case scenario, but it can happen. And so cross training can bite you just the same. So that's one lesson, I think. But in terms of the individual plays, they are just that. They're individual plays. They're individual plays that, typically you say one play doesn't beat you. But certainly 4 or 5 can, and we proved that, unfortunately, the other day. You go back and look at it, and the answer's on film, but ultimately didn't get executed. So you got to make sure you do that on every single play. You get in this game, you get rewarded when you do things right, and you get punished when you do things wrong, and that's fact, and that's never going to go away.
Thanks, Alex.
Okay, Eric Bailey and then Joe Bettner.
Hey, Alex, I know you're just getting tired of being asked about takeaways, and I apologize for that. But how important it is not to let that become just an overwhelming emphasis where it could take away from other areas.
Well, I think you make a good point, and don't have to apologize for asking about it. It's we got to own it. We got to own it as a coaching staff, specifically me. Why is every other team in the country, and I'll reiterate, every other team in the country finding a way to get those on a week in and week out basis? I've been part of a program that I think 40 some odd straight games with takeaways, and yet we find ourselves on the other side of it. No, you just continue to emphasize it, like all things. You continue to demand it. You continue to show them. Obviously there's techniques and some semblance of fundamentals to getting the ball out. But part of it's the want to. Part of it's the mindset at the finish. Obviously the first thing you got to think about is getting ball carriers on the ground. To give yourself, obviously a chance to limit gains and all that. Not every play is going to be a takeaway, but every play is an opportunity to be a takeaway. So we got to be better finishers. We got to be get hands on footballs in the under coverage in some of our, pass drops. We got to be able to D-line and get the hand up, as they rush the pass. You can affect, the flight of a football, whether you get a hand on it. And so there's a number of different areas that we can help ourselves with. And so you just continue to emphasize that, and you keep, and it pains me more to say it than probably you to hear it, but you just keep chipping away at it, and you keep swinging the hammer, and believe in our heart of hearts that we're going to come out the other side.
And just the emphasis, though. I mean, could it become too much of an emphasis where it could take away from other areas of the game?
Well, I'm sure it could. I mean, I certainly wouldn't accuse us of being in that category. I mean, is there a play or two every Saturday and every Sunday in football where someone may go for a takeaway when they otherwise should be securing a ball carry? Sure. Have we ever had those? I'm sure we have. One kind of stands out maybe the other day. But I think if we were doing that too much, I think you'd see more takeaways. In any event, no, could it? Sure. I don't think it applies to us though.
Thanks, Alex.
Yeah.
Joe Bettner and then Ryan Aber.
Alex, I'm wondering what you make of your run defense through 2 games. You guys seem to limit, Deuce Vaughn, obviously in the passing. He was a big threat in the passing game, but as far as running goes, it seems like you were able to contain him. What do you make of those guys and what they're able to do so far?
I thought we've done a pretty good job. I mean, I think statistics through a couple games can be, obviously misleading at times, but, what's not misleading is your win-loss record. It is what it is. And so, you look at, statistics, in the pass game, when you give up, big chunk plays in the pass game, you look at it and maybe a one-on-one situation, and we mentioned a busted coverage or a missed opportunity. That you're talking about a handful, 2-3 plays, and that doesn't make it, you say that as a coach and I fire back at myself. That doesn't make it okay. And so I'm not implying that it is, but I also don't think that you see a number on a sheet and it tells you the whole story, except once again, that win-loss record. That's fact. And there's no hiding from that. And there's no manipulating the numbers when it comes to the fact that we're 0-1 in Big 12 play. And obviously some of those explosive plays in the pass game specifically contributed to that. But I think if you just look over the bulk of the reps on film, I think there's more positive plays than negative plays. So we've been pleased with our ability in a lot of different areas. I'll say it this way: when you're hitting singles and you give up home runs, you got to hit a lot of singles. And so we're if you're not getting takeaways, that's kind of how I'd accuse us of kind of being right now. I don't want to minimize that, because there's a lot of snaps in football, and you got to make sure you defend them at a high level. But in practice, you can give yourself thumbs up, and say, well, we only had a couple bad plays today, and it's practice. And you kind of evaluate your practice days as just that. Well, is it more good than bad? There's only a couple plays today that maybe hurt us. Well, on a Saturday, games are different. Games are, you got to win those moments. And defensively, you're always a play away from watching the ref throw up two hands, and unfortunately it happened a couple times this past weekend.
Let's go to Ryan Aber and then Bob Prisbillo.
Yeah, Alex, Eric asked you if the emphasis on takeaways affected other areas, but I'm wondering, is there a time, or do you worry about it becoming psychological in itself, that it affects the emphasis on takeaways, affects the ability to go get them, just because as these games add up, it becomes much more magnified?
Right, and I think there absolutely is a psychological aspect to things. Everything. Inability to finish in the fourth quarter. And the ability to play 40 minutes and not 60 minutes. I mean, everything has a psychological component to it. But where I struggle, and maybe as this is as a coach, if you struggle in tackling and say, well, we just tackled too darn much. That's and I get it sounds silly to say, but that's what we're talking about. If I emphasize scoring points on offense too often, we're just never going to score. And so you got to throw work at it. You got to throw the emphasis at it. I think certainly it's not from a lack of want to, but no, there isn't a magic bullet. And obviously, if we had that, we'd have fired it a long time ago. But you continue to emphasize, you continue to praise the ones that you get in practice, and all those things, and ultimately, you got to make those shots in games. We watch NFL guys doing it. We kind of got to brain, or should we flood the brain with imaging and all those things. But no, we'll continue to emphasize it. And again, I truly believe this. We keep swinging the hammer, and we'll get there.
Appreciate it, Alex.
Sure.
Okay, Bob Prisbillo and then James Hale.
Alex, you've been talking about the ability to finish. Is that something you can really work on in practice? Can you simulate being up 35-14 with that actual same mindset?
Well, the easy answer is you simulate everything in practice, and you try so darn hard to do it. I do think that as you evaluate things, I think, probably as a coaching staff, specifically myself, did a poor job. When you have 2 months of practice and only 2 games, and obviously one game leading up into last week. And I do think back, we talk about the psychological aspect of things. I think about that, when you try to simulate in practice, maybe every play in practice just becomes such an emphasis, and you're trying to raise the standard of your defensive unit and saying that we need to be better. We need to finish every single play. We need to finish every single practice. And, the fact of the matter is, if you had 5 takeaways on a Tuesday, no one cares. You ultimately got to do it on a Saturday. And so I wonder a little bit, did we do enough to peak at the right time when you're talking about, that we need to peak on Saturday. We need to yes, simulate those moments, but not be prisoners to those moments. And when the actual moment arises in a game, that we're not able to, execute at a high level. But, that's the human condition. We talk to the guys about no evaluations, don't evaluate the scoreboard on a positive side, negative side, and all those things. But ultimately what we've done a poor job of, in our time here thus far, getting these guys to play in an elite level for 4 quarters. The reality is you don't get credit for the plays that you make in the first quarter. Past that, every play has a life of its own. You got to make the next one. And it's again, not coincidence how these plays have a tendency to stack up when that scoreboard gets tilted in the other direction. So you got to have the mental toughness about you. Again, make the guys aware of it, and continue to have the mental fortitude to handle the success aspect of things and understanding that more plays need to be made.
Yeah, let's go to James Hale and then Keegan Renault.
Alex, thanks. Mike, thanks. Alex, Iowa State, they didn't play well offensively in one game against TCU. They played very well. They got Kolar back. They had a tailback rush for 150. Your thoughts on their offense going into this game? And could you tell there was a difference in how they played in game 2 from game 1?
Yeah, I think probably game 1 you see some missed opportunities in that. Not to evaluate their tape in terms of their perspective on things, but I think that shows. Got a lot of respect. Both ability to run the ball and direct the ball both downfield. Have elite matchups with their size. The use of tight ends. Very multiple in terms of formations and shifts and motions and all that. This is a very difficult offense to defend. To put yourself in a situation that number one, don't lose the down before the ball is snapped, because there's a lot of moving parts, and you got to make sure that you got discipline that way, and that just gets you to the snap, and then at that moment you got to execute. And so they put a lot of stress on you, they impressed. When you watch them specifically last weekend, just the ability to get once again explosive plays, more in the run game this past weekend, but they certainly have proven to direct the ball downfield as well.
Thanks, Alex.
Okay, Keegan Renault and then Brandon Drum.
Alex, I know obviously on the one angle route where Deuce Vaughn broke a couple tackles and was able to get 60, 70 yards on that play, but really outside of that, the tackling and the effort, wasn't the issue. Does that ease things, that it's not effort and it's not the tackling and the little things that kind of happen early on in the season?
You know what? I will say this, and you mentioned effort, and that's the number one thing that we grade, on Sundays. The first thing you look at when you're watching that film, do you see guys flying around? And what's so disappointing is when you give effort and yet not execute. It kind of, what a shame. What a shame to, play at max velocity and we got GPS numbers, and you're seeing these guys running 20 miles an hour and 23 miles an hour. And you're like, good Lord, just really playing hard. Guys flying the football to the bitter end. But you're just not executing in on certain plays, and then those plays unfortunately added up. But no, I think your tone is different. There's no doubt about it. I mean, if you have you say, okay, well, I don't know that we played to the end. We didn't play to a standard to the end, but we played with effort till the end. And is that a consolation prize? It's nothing's a consolation prize, but certainly, no, your tone in terms of how you communicate with the guys is a whole lot different. If you're talking about effort, if you're talking about guys that aren't willing to put it on the line for Oklahoma football, then we got real issues. And so, no, is that a big deal? It's a huge deal, and it obviously doesn't change the win-loss record. And we're getting right now what we deserve, which is a loss. But no, it was there are things that you watch on film specific to the effort side of things that you can come away pleased with, and you got to build on.
Okay, Brandon Drum and then Parker Thune.
Alex, you just talked about effort, and obviously you said that's what y'all grade most on. But as you kind of changed your train of thought there when you're talking about effort and not getting what you wanted out of that situation. Mm-hmm. Does that, after a big play like that, and the guys come back to the sideline, what is your first reaction towards them? Can you kind of see the, oh crap, here we go again type mentality sometimes, and just because of what they've been through over the last couple of years on the defensive side? Yeah. Can you see that, and how do you kind of address that? Being those older guys, is there some young guys that could be, they're just naive to it, that could maybe change, it doesn't affect them as much? Is that a possibility?
Well, I mean, what you do is, you use the next play mentality. I mean, you address it in that vein. You can't control what happened on the last play. You take ownership for it as a coordinator specifically, to take the load off any individual guys. There's no reason specifically in that moment to point any fingers. That doesn't help anybody in that moment. Part of it is you remind them about, what successes you've had up to that point. Guys, we got to get back to playing our brand of football, our style of football, lock in one play at a time. You know, we talk about three, you know, you get 3 good plays in a row and go get a takeaway. I mean, that's your only options, you know. And then, you know, ultimately you got to go out there and you got to go execute. And, you know, if you dig too deep a little bit, I think in terms of, you know, bring year in and year out, you know, the cumulative impact, you could probably go down a dark road, but part of that in that moment is reminding guys that it's on us to go make a play. If you're hoping for someone else to go do it, and if a collection of guys that are of that mindset, then, you know, you're going to have some struggles, you know. So that's something you constantly battle. And that's not here, that's everywhere. You see it in the NFL, you see it in other sports. And so that psychology aspect of things where you're frustrated and you're sitting there saying that let's not blow it, you know, whatever those words that you want to use in those moments. Ultimately, what we tell our guys is you can't make any evaluations. Evaluations don't do any good. There's an event. What's your response? You want a better outcome, you got to have a better response. And unfortunately, in some respect, again, not because you want to, you know, go out there and not execute the next drive, but unfortunately that happened a few times. And so, no, that's a constant struggle, you know, the mentality on the sideline. And part of it is each individual guy, though, has to take ownership in their story, the one they're telling themselves in those moments.
Thanks, Alex.
Okay, we only have time for one more. Parker Thune.
Yeah, Coach, it seems like Delarian Turner-Yell has been one of your more consistent performers, one of your more consistent tacklers on the defensive side of the football thus far. What can you say about his performance through 2 games?
No, I've been really pleased with him. Playing fast, playing aggressive, playing real solid. And there's a number of guys. And again, it's too small of a sample study, you know, right now to start firing out names. But specific to DT, no, you know, taking that next step, I think, you know, from a year before, and obviously it's always, you know, got to do what you did the previous week, got to do again this next week. But just a guy playing fast, flashing on film, physical in the run game, physical as a tackle, holding up well in coverage. So no, been very pleased with him, and a guy that we need to have an impact on our defense.